a strange thing, the way a person can simply disappear. One moment, they're part of the world, laughing, texting, making plans for tomorrow. The next, they're gone, leaving behind only questions, rumors, and a void that never quite closes. Tonight, we're diving into the most unsettling kind of mystery, people who vanished without a trace, and the chilling theories that haunt those left behind. These are not just stories of missing persons. They are puzzles with missing pieces, cases that defy logic, and tales that will make you question how well you really know the world around you. Let's begin with a case that has haunted a small town for decades. In the summer of 1997, 16-year-old Emily Carter left her house in rural Vermont to walk her dog before dinner. She never came back. The search began within hours. Neighbors combed the woods, police brought in dogs, helicopters circled overhead. They found the dog, leash still attached, sitting at the edge of a creek, but Emily was gone. No footprints, no signs of a struggle, nothing to suggest where she'd gone or what had happened. The only clue was a single muddy handprint on a nearby tree, too large to be hers. Theories swirled. Some said she'd run away, but her friends insisted she was happy, excited for her upcoming birthday. Others whispered about a drifter seen in the area, a man with a scar across his cheek who'd been asking for work. The police followed every lead, but each one ended in a dead end. Over the years, the story grew, taking on a life of its own. Some claimed to see Emily's ghost wandering the woods at dusk, her hair tangled with leaves, her eyes wide with fear. Others believed she'd been taken by something not quite humana. Local legend about the Green Mountain Shadow, figure said to lure children into the forest, never to return. Emily's case remains unsolved, her disappearance a wound that never healed. Parents still leave the porch light on every night, just in case she finds her way home. And every year, on the anniversary of her vanishing, the town gathers for a candlelight vigil, hoping that one day, truth will come to light. But Emily's story is just the beginning. Across the world, there are thousands of cases like hers, people who stepped out for a moment and were never seen again. Some vanish from crowded cities, others from remote wilderness. Some leave behind cryptic messages, others disappear as if they were never there at all. And in every case, the theories are as chilling as the disappearances themselves. Take the case of Mark and Lisa Reynolds, a married couple from suburban Ohio. In 2011, they set out on a weekend hiking trip in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. They checked in at the ranger station, left their car in the lot, and set off on a well-marked trail. When they didn't return by Sunday night, their families called the police. The search was massive. Hundreds of volunteers, search dogs, even drones. They found the couple's campsite undisturbed, with food still on the table in their tent, zipped shut. Their backpacks were gone, but their phones and wallets were left behind. Theories ranged from the mundane to the bizarre. Some believed they'd gotten lost and succumbed to the elements, but no bodies were ever found. Others pointed to a string of strange disappearances in the park over the past decade, suggesting a serial predator was at work. A few even speculated about a secret government facility rumored to be hidden in the woods, claiming the couple had stumbled onto something they weren't meant to see. The most chilling theory, though, came from a local hunter who claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky the night the Reynolds vanished. He described a low humming sound, a sudden, blinding flash. The next morning, the area where the couple's tent had been was covered in a fine, metallic dust. The police dismissed his story as nonsense, but it spread quickly online, fueling rumors of alien abduction. Years later, the Reynolds case is still open, their families still searching for answers. Their story is a reminder that sometimes the world is stranger than we can imagine, and that the line between reality and nightmare is thinner than we think. Not all disappearances happen in the wilderness. Some occur in the heart of civilization, in places where it should be impossible to simply vanish out. In 2015, 20-4-year-old Jasmine Lee was last seen leaving her job at a busy downtown cafe in San Francisco. Security cameras captured her walking down Market Street, phone in hand, smiling as she texted a friend. She'd never made it home. Her phone was found in a trash can a few blocks away, wiped clean of all data. Her bank account was untouched, her apartment undisturbed. Theories abounded. Some believed she'd been targeted by human traffickers. Others suspected a stalker. A few pointed to a series of unsolved disappearances in the city, suggesting a pattern the police refused to acknowledge. The most unsettling theory came from an anonymous Reddit user who claimed to have seen Jasmine in a liminal space, a term used to describe places that exist between worlds. Like empty subway stations at midnight or abandoned buildings at dawn, he described her as lost, confused, unable to find her way back. The post was quickly deleted, but not before it was shared thousands of times, adding a new layer of mystery to Jasmine's case. As the years pass, the questions only multiply. How can someone disappear in a city full of cameras, witnesses, and constant activity? What happened in those final moments, and why has no trace ever been found? Jasmine's family still searches, clinging to hope, haunted by the possibility that she's out there somewhere, trapped in a place no one can reach. Sometimes, the most unsettling disappearances are the ones that seem to defy all logic cases, where the missing person leaves behind a trail of clues that only deepen the mystery. Consider the story of Daniel Alvarez, a 32-year-old software engineer from Austin, Texas. Daniel was known for his meticulous routines. He woke up at the same time every day, took the same route to work, and rarely deviated from his schedule. On the morning of March 14th, 2018, Daniel left his apartment as usual, waving to his neighbor and locking the door behind him. He never arrived at work. His car was found parked in its usual spot, his phone left charging on his nightstand, and his wallet still on the kitchen counter at first. Police suspected foul play, but there were no signs of forced entry or struggle. Security footage from the building's lobby showed Daniel leaving, dressed in his work clothes, carrying his laptop bag. The next camera, positioned at the end of the block, never captured him. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air between. One step and the next, theories about Daniel's disappearance quickly spread online. Some believed he'd staged his own vanishing, perhaps to escape debts or start a new life. But his bank accounts remained untouched, and there was no evidence. He'd planned to leave. Others pointed to his work in cybersecurity, suggesting he'd uncovered something dangerous, maybe a secret he wasn't supposed to know. A few even speculated about government involvement, citing rumors of black vans seen in the neighborhood. That morning, but the most chilling theory came from Daniel's own laptop, which police eventually accessed with the help of his family. On the desktop was a single encrypted file titled, "If I Go Missing." When investigators finally cracked the password, they found a document filled with cryptic notes, references to shadow people, glitches in reality, and a series of numbers that matched no known code. The final line read, "If you're reading this, I'm already gone. Don't trust the mirrors." The file only deepened the mystery. Was Daniel suffering from paranoia, or had he truly discovered something that led to his disappearance? To this day, no trace of him has ever been found. His family keeps his apartment just as he left it, hoping that one day he'll walk back through the door. Not all vanishings are so sudden. Some unfold over days or weeks, with the missing person leaving behind a trail of increasingly bizarre behavior. In 2009, 20-year-old college student Hannah Kim began acting strangely. Friends noticed she was distracted, jumpy, and often spoke about feeling watched. She started keeping a journal, filling it with drawings of eyes and cryptic messages about the watchers. On the night of her disappearance, Hannah called her roommate in a panic, whispering that they're here and begging her not to come home.
When police searched the apartment, they found Hannah's journal open on her bed. The last entry reading, "If I disappear, it's because they finally found me." There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. Her phone and keys were on the kitchen table, her shoes by the door. The only clue was a single muddy footprint on the balcony, far too large to be hers. Theories about Hannah's fate range from the mundane to the supernatural. Some believe she suffered a mental health crisis and wandered off, while others point to a string of similar disappearances in the area, suggesting a predator was at work. But the most persistent theory comes from the online community that has followed her case for years. That Hannah was targeted by a secretive group known as the Watchers, rumored to be involved in surveillance, mind control, and even abduction. Posts on obscure forums claim to have seen Hannah in distant cities, always looking over her shoulder, always alone. Some say she's still out there, hiding from the Watchers, leaving clues for those who know where to look. Others believe she was taken, her fate sealed by forces beyond our understanding. Then there are the cases that seem to reach beyond the boundaries of our world. In 1973, a family of 4 vanished from their home in rural Montana. The Johnsons were last seen at a neighborhood barbecue, laughing and making plans for the weekend. The next morning, their house was empty. Breakfast was half-eaten on the table, the TV still playing, and the family car parked in the driveway. There were no signs of a break-in, no evidence of violence. It was as if they'd simply stepped out of their lives and disappeared. Theories about the Johnsons' fate are as wild as they are chilling. Some believe they were victims of a government experiment gone wrong, perhaps exposed to a secret weapon or mind-altering technology. Others point to reports of strange lights in the sky that night, suggesting alien abduction. The most persistent theory, though, is that the family stumbled into a time slip, a phenomenon where people are said to accidentally cross into another era or dimension, never to return. To this day, the Johnsons' house stands empty, a time capsule of the 1970s. Neighbors say they sometimes see lights flickering in the windows, or hear laughter echoing from the backyard. Whether these are tricks of the mind or echoes from another world, no one can say for sure. Some disappearances are so public, so thoroughly documented, that their unsolved nature feels almost impossible. The case of Brian Walters is one that still baffles investigators and internet sleuths alike. Brian was a 35-year-old journalist from Chicago, known for his work on political corruption and organized crime. In October 2014, he boarded a train from Chicago to St. Louis to cover a high-profile trial. Security cameras captured him entering the station, buying a coffee, and boarding the train. He texted his editor a photo of his ticket and a quick message. "On my way. See you soon." He was never seen again. The train arrived in St. Louis on schedule, but Brian was not on board. His luggage was found in the overhead compartment, his laptop and notes untouched. Fellow passengers remembered seeing him in his seat, reading and taking notes, but no one recalled him getting off at any stop. The conductor confirmed that all doors were locked between stations, and there was no record of anyone jumping or falling from the train. Theories about Brian's disappearance are as varied as they are chilling. Some believe he was targeted by the very people he was investigating, silenced before he could publish a damning expose. Others point to a series of strange technical glitches reported on the train's security system that night, suggesting someone tampered with the footage. A few even speculate about a phantom stop, a rumored secret platform where people are taken and never seen again. The most bizarre theory comes from a fellow passenger who claimed to have seen Brian talking to a man in a dark suit, someone who didn't seem to belong. She described the man as too perfect, with an unsettling, almost artificial smile. After their conversation, Brian seemed distracted, glancing over his shoulder and checking his phone repeatedly. The woman said she fell asleep, and when she woke up, both men were gone. Brian's family continues to search for answers, hiring private investigators and combing through hours of security footage. His case has become a touchstone for online communities obsessed with unsolved mysteries, spawning countless threads, podcasts, and documentaries. Yet, despite all the attention, no trace of Brian has ever been found. His editor still keeps his last text message saved, a digital ghost of a man who vanished in plain sight. Not all vanishings are so high profile. Some slip through the cracks, barely noticed by the wider world. In 2002, a young woman named Maria Torres disappeared from her apartment in Miami. She was a recent immigrant, working 2 jobs to support her family back home. On the night she vanished, Maria called her sister in tears, saying she was being followed. She described a man in a white van who had been parked outside her building for days. Her sister urged her to call the police, but Maria was afraid of drawing attention to her undocumented status. The next morning, Maria was gone. Her apartment was locked from the inside, her purse and keys on the kitchen table. The only sign that anything was amiss was a single, muddy footprint by the window, too large to be hers. Neighbors reported seeing the white van speed away in the early hours. But the police found no evidence of a break-in or struggle. Theories about Maria's disappearance are heartbreaking. Some believe she was abducted by human traffickers, targeted because of her vulnerability. Others point to a string of similar disappearances in the area, suggesting a serial predator was at work. The most chilling theory comes from a local urban legend, the Vanishing Man, a figure said to prey on those who are alone and afraid, slipping into their lives and erasing all trace of their existence. Maria's family still lights a candle for her every year, hoping for a miracle. Her case is a stark reminder of how easily some people can disappear, their stories lost in the noise of a busy city. Then there are the cases that seem to defy all explanation, where the missing person leaves behind a trail of clues that only deepen the mystery. In 1986, a group of hikers in the Scottish Highlands stumbled upon an abandoned campsite. The tent was zipped shut, sleeping bags neatly arranged, and a pot of water still warm over the fire. But the three friends who had set up camp were gone. Their footprints led away from the site, but after a few hundred yards, they simply stopped. No sign of a struggle, no indication of where they had gone. Theories about the hikers' fate range from the plausible to the paranormal. Some believe they fell victim to the harsh elements, their bodies lost in the vast wilderness. Others point to reports of strange lights and unexplained sounds in the area, suggesting something otherworldly was at play. The most persistent theory comes from local folklore. The Mist Walker, a spirit said to lure travelers into the fog, never to return. To this day, the hikers' families visit the site every year, leaving flowers and notes in the hope that one day the truth will be revealed. Their story is a haunting reminder that sometimes the world is bigger and stranger than we can ever imagine. Sometimes the most chilling disappearances are the ones that seem to happen in the blink of an eye, in places where safety should be a given. In 2010, a 9-year-old boy named Jacob Newen vanished from a crowded amusement park in Southern California. It was a sunny Saturday, the park packed with families and laughter. Jacob was last seen standing in line for a ride with his older sister. She turned away for just a moment to tie her shoe, and when she looked back, Jacob was gone. The search was immediate and massive. Park staff locked down all exits, security combed through hours of surveillance footage, and police interviewed every witness they could find, but there was no sign of Jacob. The cameras showed him entering the line, but never leaving. His image simply disappeared between one frame and the next. No one remembered seeing him leave, and there were no reports of a struggle or abduction. Theories about Jacob's disappearance ran wild. Some believed he'd been taken by a stranger, perhaps someone who had been watching him for days. Others pointed to a series of similar cases at amusement parks across the country, suggesting a coordinated effort by a group of child abductors. The most unsettling theory, though, came from a park employee who claimed to have seen Jacob talking to a man dressed as a mascot, one who wasn't on the official roster for that day. The employee described the mascot as wrong, with a smile that never moved and eyes that seemed too real. Rumors spread quickly online, with some suggesting that the park itself was cursed, a place where children vanished into hidden tunnels or secret rooms. Others pointed to the possibility of a time slip, a moment where reality itself seemed to shift, swallowing Jacob whole. His family still visits the park every year, leaving a photo of Jacob at the entrance, hoping that one day he'll walk back through the gates. Not all disappearances involve children. In 1995, a 48-year-old woman named Eleanor Price vanished from her office building in downtown Seattle. She was a respected accountant, known for her punctuality and attention to detail. On the day she disappeared, Eleanor arrived at work early, as usual. She was seen on security cameras entering the building, greeting the receptionist, and riding the elevator to the 12th floor. She never made it to her office. Theories about Eleanor's fate are as varied as they are disturbing. Some believe she was the victim of a targeted attack, perhaps related to her work uncovering financial fraud. Others point to a series of strange maintenance reports from that morning elevators malfunctioning, lights flickering, and a mysterious power surge that wiped several hours of security footage. The most persistent theory comes from a janitor who claimed to have seen Eleanor step into the elevator with a man in a gray suit, someone who didn't work in the building and was never identified. Eleanor's family hired private investigators, scoured the city, and even consulted psychics, but no trace of her was ever found. Her office remains untouched, her desk still covered in neatly stacked files and a half-finished cup of coffee. Every year, her colleagues hold a memorial in her honor, refusing to let her memory fade. Then there are the cases that seem to reach beyond the boundaries of our understanding. In 1978, a group of friends camping in the Australian outback vanished without a trace. They were experienced hikers, well-prepared and familiar with the area. Their last radio transmission was a garbled message about strange lights and something in the sky. When searchers arrived at their campsite, they found everything in perfect order. Tents pitched, food laid out, and a campfire still smoldering. But the friends were gone. Theories about their disappearance range from the plausible to the paranormal. Some believe they fell victim to the harsh environment, lost in the vast wilderness. Others point to reports of UFO sightings in the area that night, suggesting an alien abduction. The most chilling theory comes from local Aboriginal legends about the Min Min lights, mysterious orbs said to lure travelers away from safety, never to return. To this day, the friends' families gather at the edge of the outback, lighting lanterns and sharing stories in the hope that one day the truth will come to light. Their disappearance remains one of Australia's most enduring mysteries, a reminder that some places hold secrets that may never be revealed. There are stories of people who vanish that seem almost designed to torment those left behind, leaving behind just enough evidence to suggest a solution while never quite providing closure. In 2007, a 26-year-old graduate student named Priya Desai disappeared from her apartment in Boston. She was last seen by her roommate, who said Priya was in good spirits, excited about an upcoming research trip. That evening, Priya ordered takeout, watched a movie, and texted her parents goodnight. The next morning, her bed was made, her phone and wallet were on her desk, and her suitcase was packed and ready by the door. But Priya was gone. The police found no signs of forced entry or struggle. Security cameras in the building's lobby showed Priya leaving her apartment around 2 a.m., wearing pajamas and slippers. She walked down the hall, paused at the stairwell, and then disappeared from view. The next camera, positioned at the building's only exit, never captured her leaving. It was as if she'd vanished between one step and the next. Theories about Priya's disappearance multiplied. Some believed she'd suffered a mental health crisis and wandered off, but her family insisted she had no history of such issues. Others pointed to a series of strange phone calls Priya had received in the weeks before she vanished. Calls from an untraceable number, always at odd hours, always silent on the other end. The most chilling theory came from a neighbor who claimed to have seen Priya standing in the hallway that night, talking to someone who wasn't there. The neighbor described her as dazed, like she was listening to a voice only she could hear. Online forums picked up the story, with some users suggesting Priya had been targeted by a cult or secret society. Others speculated about doorways in the building, hidden passages or portals that could explain how she left without being seen. The building itself became a character in the story, with residents reporting strange noises, cold spots, and the feeling of being watched. Priya's family still searches for answers, refusing to give up hope. Her case is a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary places can become the setting for the most extraordinary mysteries. Not all disappearances are so quiet. In 1983, a popular radio DJ named Marcus Midnight Malone vanished during a live broadcast in Detroit. He was known for his late-night show, where he played classic rock and told ghost stories to insomniacs and night shift workers. On the night he disappeared, Marcus was in the middle of a call-in segment when listeners heard him pause, then say, "Who are you? How did you get in here?" There was a scuffle, a crash, and then silence. The station cut the static, and Marcus was never heard from again. Police arrived within minutes, but the studio was empty. The door was locked from the inside, and there were no signs of forced entry. Marcus's headphones were on the desk, his coffee still steaming. The only clue was a single, muddy footprint on the carpet too large to be his. Theories about Marcus's fate are as wild as his show stories. Some believe he was the victim of a deranged fan, someone who managed to slip past security and vanish without a trace. Others point to a series of strange phone calls Marcus had received in the weeks before his disappearance, calls from a distorted voice that spoke in riddles and threats. The most persistent theory comes from listeners who claim to have heard Marcus's voice on the radio in the years since, whispering in the static late at night, begging for help.
His disappearance became a legend in Detroit. inspiring songs, books, and even a movie. But for those who knew Marcus, the pain is real. His family still keeps his old records and headphones, hoping that one day he'll come home. Then there are the cases that seem to defy all logic, where the missing person leaves behind a trail of clues that only deepen the mystery. In 1969, a group of scientists working at a remote research station in Antarctica vanished without a trace. Their last transmission was a garbled message about lights in the sky and something in the ice. When rescue teams arrived, they found the station abandoned, equipment still running, and meals half-eaten on the table. The only sign of the scientists was a series of footprints leading out onto the ice footprints that stopped abruptly, as if the group had been lifted into the air. Theories about the scientists' fate range from the plausible to the paranormal. Some believe they fell victim to the harsh environment, lost in a sudden blizzard. Others point to reports of UFO sightings in the area, suggesting an alien abduction. The most chilling theory comes from local legends about the ice shadows, mysterious figures said to haunt the frozen wasteland, luring travelers to their doom. To this day, the research station stands empty, a frozen monument to a mystery that may never be solved. There are disappearances that seem to echo through time, their details so strange and unsettling that they become the stuff of urban legend. In 1992, high school senior named Tyler Grant vanished from his small town in Maine just weeks before graduation. Tyler was well-liked, a star on the soccer team, and had just been accepted to his dream college. On the night he disappeared, he was last seen at a bonfire party with friends. Witnesses said he left early, saying he needed to get home before curfew. He never made it. The search for Tyler was immediate and intense. Police, volunteers, and even the National Guard combed the woods and fields surrounding the town. His car was found parked on a dirt road a few miles from the party, keys still in the ignition, and his backpack on the passenger seat. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away from the car, and no evidence that Tyler had planned to run away. Theories about Tyler's disappearance multiplied. Some believed he'd gotten lost in the woods and succumbed to the elements, but no trace of him was ever found. Others pointed to a series of strange phone calls his parents received in the days after he vanished, calls from a blocked number, with a voice that sounded like Tyler's, whispering, "I'm here. Don't look for me." The most chilling theory came from a local legend about the Lost Road, a stretch of highway said to appear only at night, leading travelers into another world from which they never return. Online forums picked up the story, with some users claiming to have seen Tyler hitchhiking on lonely roads across the state, always alone, always silent. Others speculated about time slips, alternate dimensions, or even government experiments. Tyler's family still leaves his bedroom untouched, hoping that one day he'll walk back through the door. Not all vanishings are so mysterious. Some are marked by violence, leaving behind a trail of fear and suspicion. In 2016, a young woman named Aisha Patel disappeared from her college campus in Atlanta. She was last seen leaving the library late at night, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Security cameras captured her walking across the quad, but she never made it to her dorm. Her phone last pinged near a construction site on the edge of campus, but a search of the area turned up nothing. Theories about Aisha's fate are as heartbreaking as they are chilling. Some believe she was abducted by a stranger, perhaps someone who had been watching her for days. Others point to a series of similar disappearances in the area, suggesting a serial predator was at work. The most persistent theory comes from a friend who claimed Aisha had confided in her about being followed by a man in a black car that was seen circling the campus in the days before she vanished. Aisha's family and friends organized vigils, distributed flyers, and launched social media campaigns, but no trace of her was ever found. Her case remains open, a painful reminder of how quickly a life can be stolen away. Then there are the cases that seem to defy all explanation, where the missing person leaves behind a trail of clues that only deepen the mystery. In 1954, a commercial airliner flying from New York to Miami disappeared from radar without a trace. The plane was carrying 57 passengers and crew, all of whom vanished along with the aircraft. No wreckage was ever found, and no distress signal was sent. The last communication from the pilot was a calm report of clear skies and smooth flying. Theories about the plane's disappearance range from the plausible to the paranormal. Some believe it crashed into the ocean, its wreckage swallowed by the deep. Others point to reports of strange lights and unexplained radar blips in the area, suggesting something otherworldly was at play. The most chilling theory comes from a handful of witnesses who claim to have seen the plane flying low over the Everglades, its lights flickering before it vanished into the night. To this day, the families of the passengers gather every year to remember their loved ones, lighting candles and sharing stories in the hope that one day the truth will come to light. The disappearance of Flight 914 remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries, haunting reminder that even in the modern world, as people land, entire planes can still vanish without a trace. Some disappearances are so bizarre, so utterly confounding, that they seem to belong more to the realm of fiction than reality. In 2013, a 30-year-old software developer named Lucas Meyer vanished from his apartment in Berlin. Lucas was a quiet, methodical man, known for his love of puzzles and cryptography. On the day he disappeared, he sent a series of strange emails. To friends and family, messages filled with coded language, references to the door, and warnings not to trust anyone who asked about it. His last email simply read, "If you find the key, you'll know where I am." When police entered Lucas's apartment, they found it meticulously organized. With a single exception, his office was covered in sticky notes, each one bearing a different sequence of numbers and symbols. His laptop was open to a blank document, and his phone was left charging on the desk. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle, and no indication that Lucas had planned to leave. Theories about Lucas's disappearance quickly spread through the online cryptography community. Some believed he had staged his own vanishing as part of an elaborate puzzle, a final challenge for those who knew him best. Others pointed to his work on a controversial encryption project, suggesting he had been targeted by hackers or even government agents. The most chilling theory came from a series of anonymous posts on a dark web forum, claiming that Lucas had found the door and crossed into another reality, a place where the rules are different, and time doesn't work the way you think. For months, amateur sleuths tried to crack the codes Lucas left behind, hoping to find a clue to his whereabouts. Some claim to have found hidden messages in the numbers, references to obscure mathematical concepts and ancient myths about doorways between worlds. Others insisted the whole thing was a hoax, a final prank by a man obsessed with secrets. But Lucas's family never gave up hope, and his case remains open to this day. Not all vanishings are so cryptic. In 1971, a family of 5 disappeared. From their farmhouse in rural Iowa, the Carters were well known in the community, active in local events and church activities. On the night they vanished, neighbors reported seeing strange lights in the sky and hearing a low, humming sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground. The next morning, the Carters' house was empty. Dinner was still on the table, the TV was on, and the family car was parked in the driveway. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away from the house, and no evidence that the family had planned to leave. Theories about the Carters' disappearance are as wild as they are chilling. Some believe they were abducted by aliens, taken from their home in the dead of night. Others point to a series of underground tunnels rumored to run beneath the town, suggesting the family had discovered something they weren't supposed to see. The most persistent theory comes from local folklore about the Night Whistler, a supernatural entity said to lure people away with its haunting song every year. The town holds a candlelight vigil for the Carters, gathering at the old farmhouse to share stories and remember the family that vanished without a trace. The house itself has become a magnet for ghost hunters and curiosity seekers, many of whom claim to have heard the faint sound of whistling on the wind. Then there are the cases that seem to straddle the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. In 2005, a young woman named Zoe Martinez disappeared from her college campus in Madrid. She was last seen leaving a late-night study session, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Security cameras captured her walking across the quad, but she never made it to her dorm. Her phone last pinged near an old abandoned building on the edge of campus, but a search of the area turned up nothing. Theories about Zoe's fate are as varied as they are unsettling. Some believe she was the victim of a crime of opportunity, targeted by someone who knew her routine. Others point to a series of strange dreams Zoe had described to friends in the weeks before she vanished, dreams about being chased through endless hallways, always searching for a door that never appeared. The most chilling theory comes from a janitor who claimed to have seen Zoe standing in the doorway of the abandoned building, staring into the darkness as if she were waiting for something or someone to call her inside. Zoe's family and friends continue to search for answers, refusing to let her memory fade. Her case remains one of Spain's most enduring mysteries, a reminder that sometimes the line between reality and nightmare is thinner than we think. There are disappearances that seem to ripple outward, affecting not just families and friends, but entire communities. In 1988, the small town of Willow Creek, Oregon, was shaken when 3 teenagers vanished during a weekend camping trip. The group, best friends since childhood, had planned to spend 2 nights at a popular site near the river. They were experienced. Campers well prepared and had checked in with the park ranger before heading out. On Sunday morning, when they failed to return, a search party was organized. What they found only deepened the mystery. The campsite was undisturbed. Tents were zipped, sleeping bags neatly arranged, and breakfast supplies laid out as if the group had just stepped away for a moment. Their backpacks were missing, but their phones, wallets, and even their shoes were left behind. The only clue was a series of footprints leading from the campsite to the river's edge, footprints that stopped abruptly at the water. With no sign of anyone entering or leaving the river, theories about the teenagers' disappearance multiplied. Some believed they had drowned, swept away by the current, but no bodies were ever found, and the river was unusually calm that weekend. Others pointed to a series of strange animal sightings in the area large. Shadowy figures glimpsed at dusk, moving silently through the trees. The most persistent theory came from local legend, the River Wraith. A spirit said to haunt the water, luring travelers to their doom with its mournful song. The town of Willow Creek was never the same. Parents became fearful, children were kept indoors, and the once popular campsite was abandoned. Every year, the families of the missing teenagers gather at the river, lighting lanterns and sending them downstream in the hope that one day their loved ones will return. Not all disappearances are so remote. In 2017, a young man named Ethan Brooks vanished from a crowded subway platform in New York City. Ethan was a recent college graduate on his way to a job interview. Security cameras captured him entering the station, buying a ticket, and waiting on the platform. He texted his mother a quick update. "Train's late, I'll call you after," and then, in the space of a few minutes, he was gone. Theories about Ethan's disappearance are as varied as the city itself. Some believe he was the victim of a random crime, targeted by someone who saw him as an easy mark. Others point to a series of technical glitches on the subway's surveillance system, that morning cameras that went dark for exactly 7 minutes. Just as Ethan vanished, the most chilling theory comes from a fellow commuter who claimed to have seen Ethan step onto a train that wasn't listed on the schedule, a train with no number, no destination, and only a handful of silent passengers. Ethan's family and friends launched a massive search, plastering the city with flyers and organizing search parties. But no trace of him was ever found. His case became a touchstone for urban legends about ghost trains phantom, subway cars that appear only to those who are about to disappear themselves. Then there are the cases that seem to defy all logic, where the missing person leaves behind a trail of clues that only deepen the mystery. In 1962, renowned physicist named Dr. Harold Finch vanished from his laboratory at a prestigious university. Dr. Finch was working on a top-secret project related to quantum mechanics, and his disappearance sparked rumors of espionage, sabotage, and even time travel. Theories about Dr. Finch's fate are as wild as his research. Some believe he was abducted by a foreign government, taken to work on secret projects overseas. Others point to a series of strange experiments Dr. Finch had been conducting in the weeks before he vanished, tech experiments involving quantum tunneling and parallel realities. The most chilling theory comes from a cryptic note found in his office, written in his own hand. "If I am not here, I am everywhere." To this day, Dr. Finch's disappearance remains unsolved, a mystery that continues to fascinate scientists and conspiracy theorists alike. His colleagues still keep his office just as he left it, a silent tribute to a man who may have discovered more than he bargained for. Some vanishings are so deeply woven into the fabric of a place that they become part of its identity. About by locals and passed down through generations, in 1949, the entire population of a remote Alaskan fishing village, over 30 people, disappeared overnight. The village, nestled on the edge of a vast icy bay, was known for its tight-knit community and self-sufficiency. When a supply boat arrived one morning, the crew found the village eerily silent. Fires still smoldered in hearths, meals sat half-eaten on tables, and fishing boats bobbed at their moorings. But not a single person remained. Theories about the village's fate have become legend. Some believe the villagers were forced to flee by a sudden natural disaster, perhaps a landslide or a freak storm, but there was no evidence of such an event. Others point to stories of a mysterious illness that swept through the region, causing hallucinations and paranoia. The most chilling theory comes from indigenous folklore, the Baywalker, a spirit said to rise from the water and claim entire communities, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Investigators found no signs of violence or struggle. The only clue was a series of footprints leading from the village to the water's edged footprints that simply vanished at the shoreline. The case remains one of Alaska's greatest mysteries, a haunting reminder that even entire communities can disappear without a trace. Not all disappearances are so dramatic. In 2001, a young woman named Grace Lynn vanished from her apartment in Vancouver. Grace was a talented artist, known for her vibrant murals and community projects. On the night she disappeared, she was seen working late in her studio, finishing a new piece for a local gallery. Her roommate returned home to find the apartment empty. Grace's art supplies scattered across the floor, and her phone buzzing with missed calls. The door was locked from the inside, and there were no signs of forced entry. Theories about Grace's disappearance are as varied as her artwork. Some believe she was the victim of a stalker, someone who had become obsessed with her public persona. Others point to a series of strange emails Grace had received in the weeks before she vanished, messages filled with cryptic symbols and references to the other side. The most persistent theory comes from a fellow artist who claimed to have seen Grace painting late at night, talking to someone who wasn't there. He described her as entranced, like she was listening to a voice only she could hear. Grace's family and friends continue to search for answers, organizing art shows in her honor and keeping her memory alive. Her case remains open, a painful reminder that even the most vibrant lives can be snuffed out in an instant. Then there are the cases that seem to blur the line between reality and myth. In 1976, a group of spelunkers exploring a vast cave system in Kentucky vanished without a trace. The group was experienced, well-equipped, and had mapped out their route in detail. When they failed to return, a massive search was launched. Rescuers found their gear neatly stacked at the cave's entrance, but no sign of the group inside. The only clue was a series of strange markings on the cave wall symbols that matched no known language, but which some believe are warnings. Left by previous explorers, theories about the spelunkers' fate range from the plausible to the paranormal. Some believe they became lost in the labyrinthine tunnels, their bodies hidden in some undiscovered chamber. Others point to local legends about the cave keepers, ancient spirits said to guard the deepest parts of the earth. The most chilling theory comes from a caver who claimed to have heard voices, echoing through the tunnels, voices calling for help, and suddenly silenced to this day. The cave remains a place of fascination and fear, drawing adventurers and thrill-seekers from around the world. The missing spelunkers are remembered in annual ceremonies, their names carved into the rock at the cave's entrance, a silent testament to the enduring power of the unknown. There are disappearances that seem to haunt the very landscape, leaving behind a sense of unease that lingers for generations. In 1965, a school bus carrying 12 children and their driver vanished on a foggy morning in rural West Virginia. The bus, was last seen crossing a narrow bridge over the river, headlights glowing faintly in the mist. When it failed to arrive at the school, a search was launched immediately. The bridge was intact, the river calm, and there were no skid marks or signs of an accident. The only clue was a set of tire tracks that veered off the road and disappeared into the woods, but no bus was ever found. Theories about the missing bus have become part of local folklore. Some believe the bus was swept away by a sudden flood, but the river was searched for miles in both directions, and not a single piece of debris was ever recovered. Others point to stories of a phantom road that appears only in the thickest fog, leading travelers into another world. The most chilling theory comes from a retired teacher who claimed to have seen the bus years later, parked in a clearing deep in the forest, its windows dark and empty, as if waiting for its passengers to return. Every year, the families of the missing children gather at the bridge, leaving flowers and notes in the hope that one day the mystery will be solved. The disappearance of the school bus remains one of the most enduring unsolved cases in American history. A reminder that even the most ordinary journeys can end in the extraordinary. Not all vanishings are so large in scale. In 1999, a young man named David Kim disappeared from his dorm room at a prestigious university in Seoul. David was a top student, known for his quiet demeanor and intense focus. On the night he vanished, he was seen studying late in the common room, then returning to his room around midnight. His roommate awoke the next morning to find David's bed empty, his books neatly stacked, and his phone and wallet on the desk. The door was locked from the inside, and there were no signs of forced entry. Theories about David's disappearance are as varied as the city itself. Some believe he was the victim of academic pressure, driven to run away by the intense demands of university life. Others point to a series of strange dreams David had described to friends in the weeks before he vanished. Dreams about being trapped in the maze, and always searching for an exit that never appeared. The most persistent theory comes from a janitor, who claimed to have seen David walking the halls late at night, talking to someone who wasn't there. David's family and friends continue to search for answers, refusing to let his memory fade. His case remains open, a painful reminder that even the brightest futures can be lost in an instant. Then there are the cases that seem to defy all logic, where the missing person leaves behind a trail of clues that only deepen the mystery. 1980. A group of scientists conducting research in the Amazon rainforest vanished without a trace. Their last radio transmission was a garbled message about strange lights and something moving in the trees. When rescue teams arrived, they found the camp abandoned, equipment still running, and meals half-eaten on the table. The only sign of the scientists was a series of footprints leading into the jungle, footprints that stopped abruptly, as if the group had been lifted into the air. Theories about the scientists' fate range from the plausible to the paranormal. Some believe they fell victim to the dangers of the rainforest, lost in the vast wilderness. Others point to reports of UFO sightings in the area, suggesting an alien abduction. The most chilling theory comes from local legends about the forest shadows, mysterious figures said to haunt the jungle, luring travelers to their doom. To this day, the research site stands empty, a monument to a mystery that may never be solved.